everyone, welcome to DmJunkies, where we show you your newest addiction of Dungeons and Dragons, a show for DMs by DMs. I am your sorcerer, addict, whatever you want to call me, Kawaii Ali, and would my guest please introduce himself?
Hello, I am ShopGoblin. A lot of you may know me from ANI or TikTok. Yeah,
That's all you're going to talk about for your introduction?
I don't know. I don't know where people know me from. I mean,
Then that's perfectly okay.
TikTok's kind of where stuff came from, and then Adventures and Initiative started from that. And apparently, people like my douchebag of a character named Kazian.
Not to mention, too, you also have a Facebook page, too.
I have posted on it twice in the last year, so that says a lot about that page and the following that isn't my friends, all three of them.
Alrighty, so I just want to have a quick a quick conversation with you. As you know, we have someone that actually gave us a fan question.
Mm-hmm.
And so one of those
Couple of them.
questions, a big couple, shout out to
No,
Zach.
we had somebody else ask a question too about an item. So we've had a few
Really?
emails. Yeah, I posted it up in one of the discords.
There you
You saw
go.
it.
Well, did I? I'm not sure.
I think you
Anyways.
did.
Okay, well,
I
chose Zach.
digress.
Okay. uh, So, fan question, came from Zach Nelson, I believe. That's his name, so shout out to you, bud. How long have you been a DM, and how long have you played D&D, Shop?
That actually is the exact same amount of time. 3-4 years now, I think. I did some Pathfinder years ago, where I was a player and had a bunch of fun with my friends, and then I played about half a game of a 3.5 campaign, and the DM was not to my taste. So I was not in that campaign for very long, and then kind of got an itch about 3-4 years ago. Got a hold of some friends, and Wifey Goblin went, "Hey, if I get the books and come up with something to DM you guys, do you want to try this out and see what you think?" And then kind of been on and off with actually getting to play or just buying books for no reason other than to have them since then.
I mean, who doesn't love having the physical books? Fun fact, I actually don't have any of the books. I bought PDF versions of everything.
PDF
It's been
versions are so
great.
much easier, but I like having the physical books in my hands sometimes.
Yeah, that should be a future episode, just, how to be a DM on a budget. Because, yeah.
There's a few websites I can recommend where most of the stuff is on there for free.
Alrighty. Well, so you got into D&D a couple years ago. Have you actually DM'd before?
Yes, I have.
That's
That was
cool.
literally 3-4 years ago when I got to D&D. That was the first thing I did, was I was
Oh,
DMing a
really?
campaign.
That's cool.
I didn't really have any idea what the hell I was doing.
Mood.
And I got a hold of a friend of mine who had just invited me to play in his game and introduced him to kind of the idea I was thinking of. And he went, "Well, you're starting out, try a pre-written game for your like first quest, and then kind of go from there and work that into your world." And I took his advice. I went onto DM's Guild and found, just a simple, short, level 1 thing. Almost killed my players.
That's a
And
mood.
then and then kind of went, "Oh, okay, well, I guess I got it figured out," and started moving into what was my first world and my first kind of big lore building and experience.
That's really, really cool. So, since this is also going to be on the ANI channel and stuff like that, since you've been playing in the world of L, which I believe that's the name of it if I'm not mistaken, it is L, right?
The Isles of El, yes, is
Okay.
the world, the part of the world that we are in.
What's like the best thing that you've learned from playing ANI, or what is like one thing that like you yourself have enjoyed when it came to world building?
At least in relation to ANI, like Dono, honestly, like playing for him and working with him behind the scenes to kind of figure out character stuff and think of details and stuff, like it's kind of like going to a master class for that side of the things. I mean, this is a world that he has been thinking of for years and has stuff just you can ask him about anything and he pretty much will know it or have it written down. And that kind of detail that he gets into, it makes it really easy to get immersed and kind of watch how he approaches things and kind of go, oh, that's really cool. Like I used to always like having players who are like, oh, well, my entire family was killed by a dragon and that's the whole reason I'm now an adventurer. And he went, like, literally that was Kazian's backstory at first, was he had grown up with his dad and then his dad died in a dragon attack. And I put that to Dono and Dono's like, let's not go for anything heroic at this level. Let's roll it back, go for very basic, and then maybe down the road, maybe his dad dies to a dragon, but not right now.
That's a mood.
And that kind of was the first time that it kicked me in the head of like, oh, your hero doesn't have to be something amazing. Your character doesn't have to be the big driving force. Doesn't have to be heroic to put them out into the world. They can just be in the world. And it's something
Be a
I never
McDonald's cashier.
Yeah, like it's something I had never thought of before, but the moment that it hit me, I'm like, wow, I had never thought of that before. And pretty much every time I've worked with Dono and stuff, figuring out details of stuff in a background or asking him questions about a magic item or even just asking his advice on something that I'm thinking of, it's always like that, where he has this very different perspective and then I just kind of kick in and go, oh yeah. So now that I've raved about my DM for like 20 minutes,
Yeah.
legitimately he is, I really appreciate the amount of learning I've gotten from everybody in ANI, and that kind of, it's a great combo of people that just have such different backgrounds and variations that we all really blend
Kind of connect
nicely.
to. Yeah.
And it's
So
entertaining how much of like my own world building has been inspired by those guys now.
yeah, it's really interesting. Now, I've also noticed that you like to make magic items and you like putting them in like a few of your TikToks. And I guess my question for you is, what would you kind of prefer? Would you prefer a lot of the magic items that you could find in books, or do you prefer making your own homebrew?
So I do like the ones in books. There's a lot in there that are really good. There's some that maybe they're from older versions or they work in very specific settings, but they're not something I go for, which is why I lean a lot towards homebrew on a lot of items. Because there's one that I'm currently working out details on that is essentially a magic item combo of the unicorn blood from Harry Potter and a Red Bull.
Oh boy.
Yeah,
Wait,
one's taking
wait.
some time.
I have a feeling it gives you wings. Just saying.
Actually, I hadn't thought of that part yet. Essentially, the combo there is that it's going to be a very powerful potion, like something that essentially
Okay.
you use an action to drink it, and in that round, that 6 seconds after your turn happens, it gives you the effects of a long rest. But I realize
Ooh.
how broken that can be so quickly, which is where the unicorn from blood from Harry Potter thing comes in of, but if you drink too many of these, which they're already going to be rare and expensive, but if you drink too many of them in a row, like there is going to be some nasty consequences that come along with it. Like, and I mean nasty, like you're going to get 5 points of exhaustion from these if you drink
Oh,
too many, is where I'm leaning.
oh,
And
honey.
yeah, like it's one of those things where it's something of, it popped into my head one day. Actually, I think I was watching one of Dono's TikToks where he was in the warehouse because he works for Red Bull, and I'm like, how have I never thought of this before? An energy drink potion.
Oh boy.
Um, so there's ones like that where it's really kind of random that it pops into my head, and then there's ones random but something that fits into a world or an idea. Then there's ones that are like I did the beam saber because I'm a Gundam nerd, and that's an existing item in a Gundam universe, and I wanted to bring it into D&D as kind of something that people could have fun with. So that's the other end of my kind of homebrew end, is it's either I'm making something that I think would be fun in the world or be practical to have, or I'm making something that's bringing an item from outside the world in, and bringing it into the terms of magic. Because beam saber, oh, it's a giant lightsaber. Well, no, I have to make that into something that works in D&D and is entertaining. So what did I do? Oh, it's a sword carved from the beam of a ship or something like that, and it uses radiant damage.
There you go. So
And
I guess
it
it kind of just,
worked.
yeah, it kind of moves me into my next question for you. It's when you forge a weapon, because I like to say forge instead of creating because I'm a nerd. But
Yeah, yeah.
when you forge your magic weapon or item or anything, have you ever tied lore to it? Like, do you like have items that tell a story, or do you just like making items that go bam, bam, bam? Because I know that a lot of players are like, oh, I wonder what this came from. Ooh, this is really powerful. But like, was there like something that like, how many ogres did this slain or something like that?
Yeah, the history of the item or something like that. And it's one of those things. I wish I had more time on TikTok, and it's something that we've discussed for like, oh, if we had the time, what is this all about? One that jumps to mind immediately is the oh, what did I name it? The Axe of the Petrified Forest was one item that I had made, which I love. The inspiration for that was I was watching a video on YouTube of a guy making this like axe that looked like chipped stone, but it was out of poured resin and had a bunch of like petrified wood inlaid into it. And
Gotta
that kind
love
of
YouTube.
kicked off that thought in my head. And then after I first made the video, I started thinking about it. I'm like, well, how was this made? Where did this come from? And I have this entire idea of this section of the world that was a massive ancient fey forest, and due to a cataclysm involving a rather petulant earth elemental and some crazy magic, the entire forest went from being verdant and green to petrified stone, just miles upon miles of petrified stone. And in the center of it, the heart tree of this forest, um the fae that lived there, who have now been essentially either killed or changed by this massive catastrophe to their living space, carved from the section of the heart tree this axe that holds in it all of the magic and emotion of that moment where their entire lives changed. And
Mm.
I haven't really expanded the details of the lore of like, I mean, if I really get into it, I could probably figure out, okay, I know exactly who made it. I know when they made it in my timeline. I know who held it at one point. I know who took it from them. And it's one of those things where the initial forging or creation, depending on if it's a weapon or or a general item, that doesn't necessarily have the lore to it. But it's afterwards, once you have the oh, I know it does exactly this, and I know it does this, where you can kind of figure out, like, did it start out that way, was it forged that way, and go from there to kind of to lean it into the world more. Like, I love the
Yeah.
idea of items that maybe didn't start out um, as the type of magic item they are now. They've been corrupted or cleansed in certain ways or changed by their owners
In a
to make
way,
things.
yeah, and a good example of that I think is like Lord of the Rings or even The Hobbit when it came to Sting, the little dagger. I kind
So
of think of that.
my nerd side is actually showing a little harder, because the way that I always is in Destiny with the gun Thorn, which is an exotic hand cannon in Destiny, that there's a quest line to get the gun that Thorn was made from, where essentially the
Uh,
idea is Thorn is a
you just cut out
corrupted
right
weapon.
there.
Was
Could you
I was
restate?
saying Thorn is a corrupted weapon, but the gun it
Okay.
was made from, Rose, was this weapon that had purity and light to it, and then that corruption changed it into another weapon, another item, and gave it a drastically different aesthetic and feel. I also love the idea of players having the potential to do that in a world, because
Mm-hmm.
ultimately, once your players are there, they're affecting that lore, they're
Oh
writing
yeah.
the legend. And I love it when I can get a player who's like, I really like this, but is there a way I can change it to this? And they come up with a suggestion, and I'm like,
Inspiration
we can
point.
figure that out. Like, if
Yeah.
somebody starts out with, oh, they start out with like an heirloom weapon that's like their grandfather's sword, and it's just like a
Mm.
basic greatsword or something, and then they said, oh, well, I want to get it enchanted. Okay, what do you want the enchantment to be? And then that's the first step of like, depending on what you do with this weapon, this might become one of those legendary blades. If you imbue it with the soul of your grandfather or something, it could become a sentient weapon.
Mm.
And I love that adaptation effect when it comes to magic items and their lore.
Yeah. So D&D story time with what happened in one of the campaigns that I was in. So I had a character named Kataya that went from like, you know how like when you see shows, you always see them go from like the lowest of low to like the highest they can be.
Generally, yeah.
Yeah, so my character was the opposite. Like she went and kept on getting corrupted and corrupted and corrupted until she turned into one of the four like horsemen type of things. Well, the party had killed her off and people had killed her off. But the weapon that she had and stuff, what happened was that she got turned to stone, but her weapon stayed. And after a couple years went by and like another campaign that we did came through and we used the same world and stuff, that person actually took the weapon and turned into my old character and they tried to use it as like a revenge tactic and stuff.
Nice.
So it kind of turned
Yeah, and
into like
that's what I'm talking about. The big bad.
yeah.
Yeah.
But
No, I love that kind of stuff, so
yeah, it kind of rolls into my next question about whenever people make certain like weapons and stuff. I, for one, when I make my weapons or even magic items, I really love to set it to certain alignments. I don't like just having them in chaotic neutral. I like trying to find ones that are like lawful good or chaotic good. I have made a couple chaotic evil cursed weapons, don't get me wrong, but like I love making like a different variety and I don't know if you are the same way with that way because I know a lot of DMs are different.
when it comes to alignment, I have a very odd relationship with it as far as a DM goes, because I see it like there's people who are like, oh, my character is chaotic good, or my character is chaotic neutral.
Mm.
And I've talked about this before in other stuff, where I see it as much more of a fluid thing. Like your character might be overall a chaotic good person, but there's potential they might do something that is, more chaotic or more lawful, or even something that's completely against their normal habits. And it's this much more fluid thing. And with items, I generally keep it the same way, where an item, unless it's cursed, I generally keep it as a very neutral thing. If it is cursed or sentient,
Okay.
that's where you can have the fun of, okay, it's a sentient item. Is it a good character? Is it evil? Is it an asshole? Is it a nice guy? Like, who is this being that lives inside this item? And that I like to see how that can inflect on the item itself. A good example of the idea that I'm getting at is Excalibur from Soul Eater, where Excalibur is this
Oh,
great sword,
you can't see my face.
but the being inside makes you want to
Cool.
commit homicide.
Makes you want to just, blow up a tavern.
Exactly. Like it's this idea of like when it's sentient or it's something that has a specific connotation, like being a cursed item, or say something's like a blessed item and it was blessed by a god, that's definitely going to lean it more towards a good side.
Yeah, and
When
then also you have Excalibur in the mix.
yeah, which is like the most chaotic, neutral,
Side
leaning towards
effects.
chaotic evil character ever. Um,
Yeah.
but no, I love kind of those ideas in that, especially because then you can kind of play it off. Like you tell your characters, oh, you've identified this item and it's cursed or it's blessed. And a character's like, oh, well, I'll take it. Like, real question then is, okay, well, depending on what this is the character going to be able to use it? Because
Right.
if it's just a curse where it affects anybody, okay, cool, that's pretty standard. We all have experienced that or seen somebody experience it. But I love the idea of like a cursed item that can't be used by an evil creature.
Oof.
Because then it's like, okay, yeah, you want to use its power, but it's going to come with a price. Or
Kind
good
of like a
items
Rumpelstiltskin.
good items that can't be run by a good creature or good being unless they fit a very specific niche, like kind of like the Holy Avengers swords
Hmm.
in the main books, which you have to be that lawful good paladin to use, but expanded a little more. Like maybe the being that blessed that, you have to be a vegetarian, which there's
Right.
a lot more races now and a lot more players that they just decide, okay, my character's a vegetarian. So if you know your party, you can really kind of play with that. Especially if, like, say you have a rogue who loves daggers. Well, what if there's a dagger that, yeah, it's great, but actually, here, this is off the top of my head. Here's a magic item for you: the whistling dagger. It's just basically a +2 dagger. Once a day, gives you the ability to use the blink spell. But unless you are using blink when you are stealthing, you have to roll a D100 or percentile, and if it rolls below your level, plus
Oh.
20. So your level plus 20.
Oh
If
no.
it rolls below that, the dagger starts whistling a random tune.
All I think about is just Steamboat Willie or like the Guardians of the Galaxy arrow. That's what I'm thinking
But
of with
like,
that.
it's one of those things where, like, a rogue is immediately going to be, especially if they're a dagger heavy rogue, like some of the people that I play with, uh, who I will have to tell to listen to this episode because
Yeah.
I'm calling them out. Um, but like a dagger heavy rogue, it's like, okay, well now, yeah, it's a dagger and you love daggers, but this one might screw you over hard.
Mm.
But at the same time, I know I'm an evil DM in a lot of ways, but I have the nice side too where, oh, well, it's a dagger, but if you have certain expectations that are met, maybe there's a positive to it. It stops whistling and instead can be used to throw a voice and cause a distraction if you do certain things or complete certain rites to attune to it.
Well, anyways, throwing it to going to hearing people's voices and stuff. Question for the viewers is: if you are liking this episode, make sure that you remember to subscribe and please hit the notification bell. If you have any questions for us that you would like us to answer, please go to the email at the bottom of the description below.
Also, we have a Twitter, which is a much better place to send us questions.
Yes, and DmJunkies also has a place to go and ask questions too. So if you want to ask questions that are mainly for just DmJunkies, or if you want one that's just for ANI, or even both, just you'll find us somewhere.
Yeah, we are on Twitter. We have our emails, all sorts of good stuff. But yeah, it's one of those fun things, especially because you don't necessarily have to decide it when you create the item. I mean, you could have players that they've had an item for 6 years in game, and all of a sudden they do something that they didn't know it was going to do that, and oh, their entire item just changed to a much better thing or got a lot worse. Like, what if you have special armor, but if you kill a child, even by accident, it now causes damage
Oof.
or
That or
something like that? I don't know. That was just a
what
random.
else? Yeah, there was this one magic item, and like for the longest of time, I think it was like a 16 session game. It's like my first time ever DMing, so I can't remember
Yep.
what it was. But this one player, he's like, "Oh, I always carry my wife's wedding ring around. I always have it around my neck. I always like, as much as I love booze and women, I love her more, and she is always going to be my number one." And so I used that to my advantage. And
Yep.
near the last 4 sessions and stuff, he's a cleric. So funny name is that his character name was Donnie. So I always laugh whenever I hear Dono's Dono the cleric thing. But what happened was is he met his god or goddess, and she blessed him with the power of whenever there was a full moon, if he was to raise it to the full moon, he would have the choice to either talk to his wife that's dead or son. And
Yee.
there were tears. There were a lot of tears. There was hashtag roll for emotions going on through that. And yeah, at the end of the campaign, he got his wife and kid back, and the item was still there. So now it's a heritage item, where
Yeah.
if he was to pass it on or if he was to die, his soul would be part of it. And so now whoever holds it up to the full moon gets to see that person's family. But the only way for it to work was if you were part of that family line. If
Okay.
not, it's just a ring.
There's a
So I
lot of ways you can have fun with that kind of thing.
oh yeah, and also like that person was like, "Hey, I want to use this character's son." I'm like, "Oh, this is gonna be fun." I'm excited for December 6th. But anyways, I got 2 more questions, and
Okay.
then we can do closing, and it's kind of combined into one question. It's have you ever made a cursed item before and used it as a reason to punish players? And do you think it's the right thing to do? If so, why? And if not, why not? If you want to share your opinion.
So I have never had a campaign go long enough where I put players in the situation of having a cursed item. Um, if I had made a cursed item, I'm making it for usually a specific purpose. That said, I'm not the kind of person where I'm going to punish players with it. To me, that's a little.
Harsh.
It doesn't make sense to me to punish a player. If a
Mm.
player is being, a pain and they're being difficult, and outside of game, you've pulled them aside, you've talked to them about it, and you've gone through the steps of like being a DM and be like, hey, you are affecting how this game is running by not participating. If you have gone through all that and they still haven't worked, I'm not the kind of person where I'm going to be nice about it at that point. I've gone through the nice side. I will kick your ass out. And if
All right.
I'm not going to be the guy who, okay, your character, now has a cursed item and that's going to punish you for it. It doesn't make sense.
Because
It's
then that way they're not having fun and they're making the party not have fun.
exactly.
In a way.
It's just going to make things worse. Like if you're punishing the character for something they've done, okay. But if you're doing it to punish a player, like you're ruining everybody's experience. Like you're not going to have fun with a player that's bummed out. That's the whole point of DMing, is to make our players happy. That said, we might do it by making them emotionally damaged, Dono. But
Episode 23 and 24, Dono.
episodes 1 through 24.
By the way, if you guys haven't checked out that playlist, there is a playlist on the Adventures Initiative channel, so you can check it out and get caught up. Good binge watching,
It
since we are going
even
to be gone
it
for a
even
week.
includes our terrible, terrible recording of episode 0.
Oh yeah, that
Back
was
in
pretty
the day.
bad.
That was We had
That was
no idea what we were doing. But no, it's
uh,
one of those things. I don't believe in punishing a player. If a player is
good.
doing something that you would think means needing punishment, that's something to deal with outside of game. And if it's a problem that isn't getting fixed, you kick them out. It is not something I put up with. That
Alrighty.
said, never had that problem myself, but DMs do not be afraid to punish characters.
There's a difference, especially for new DMs.
Oh yeah. And
Who,
we've had
yeah.
questions about that before, so
Okay, hey, we answered 2 fan questions then in a way. But anyways, we're going to be doing outros, so I just want to remind everybody that this has been DM Junkies. I am your host, Kawaii Ali. Hopefully you enjoyed this episode, and thank you, ShopGoblin, for coming on to the show. I really, really appreciate it, and thank you for letting me, and this is for Dono too, thank you for letting me be part of Adventures in Initiative. I'm very excited for the future.
yeah, we're happy to welcome DM Junkies to the A&I family and bring you, you've been our fan since the very beginning and a good friend
Yeah.
to us. So we love kind of bringing you in and being able to support you and see where this kind of keeps going. So,
Alrighty.
and it's been a joy to talk with you.
Yeah, so where can people find you?
I am on Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter as ShopGoblin _, because apparently ShopGoblin without the underscore is taken. And then on Facebook, I am just ShopGoblin. Yeah.
Okay, and I have been Kawaii Ali. You can check me out on YouTube. You can check me out on TikTok as Kawaii _or_a_mess. And you can also now find me, hopefully, on Wattpad as the non-binary fantasy. Now, I hope you guys have a wonderful evening, morning, or afternoon, and remember to just roll it.